Brand of Brothers is coming back next year. In the meantime, here's an interview from The Vault recorded back in January of 2021. Please welcome musician turned creative director and former Sotheby's International Chief Brand Officer, Gavin Knox-Grant. I'm going to do that thing that every interview starts with, which is, "Hey, awesome. Gavin, thanks for joining us."
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very, very privileged and honored to be here.
It's definitely a mutual feeling. So let's dive in. Our first question is less of a question and more of a statement that I'd love for you to respond to. So much like many designers, be it writing, music, or what have you, you have a multidisciplinary background. Talk to me about the discovery of your passion for design and how you reconciled your love of music composition.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll try and make this as concise as possible, given the fact that we have limited time. I'm not good at a lot of things. I mean, I've got an aptitude for two things essentially, and that is music and call it art. Well, very loosely aesthetics, call it aesthetics. So in school, I pretty much just failed everything except for music and art. I started playing the trumpet at a very young age, and I was working professionally from the age of about 15. And it was a given that I was going to become a professional musician. And I went to I did a jazz degree at the University of Cape Town to become a jazz trumpet player, which I subsequently did. And what happened was, we always, when you're younger, you have these preconceived ideas of, I'm going to be this. I've seen the movie of my life and it's going to look like that and feel like that to be this glamorous thing. And of course, the lifestyle and what it is to be that person in that life doesn't always necessarily line up. And certainly didn't. I was very much a full-time musician for a long time, and the lifestyle and the not being in control of your finances, essentially, unless you are in the 0.001%. If you're a working everyday musician, you're essentially waiting for the calls. And I was looking for something else. I got frustrated. I was in an original band. I had a full out with the guy. And at the time, and it's really interesting because I've never really considered design. I didn't actually know what design was. I thought it was, maybe logos, or it's these people that do kind of posters. I didn't really know. And I was a huge, almost I would say, a disciple of U2 at the time. And I remember thinking the power of the band had almost more to do with brand, which I didn't know what it was then. But that's essentially what it is now. If you took away, especially at the period of time that this was the early 90s, if you took away those Achtung Baby and Zuroka, and you took away the Bono alter ego of the Fly, and you took away this whole concept and this whole world that they created around me, you just had the music with no name, no people, no brand. I remember thinking it just had much less power. And the final straw was I was part of the rigging crew on a Michael Jackson concert when he came to Cape Town. And we were invited to the show. And I remember seeing him on stage thinking, but people are so far away, that may not be him. There are Michael Jackson impersonators that are better than him. They don't know that it's him, but they've spent a fortune and they're screaming at the myth and the hype and this mythical. It was just magic to me, that the idea that you could create perceived value, which is essentially what it ends up becoming, right? Through a friend of my mother's and various different things, I met a design lecturer. We had a conversation, and literally the next day I signed up for design school and then spent the next 3 years, probably the most life-changing 3 years of my life, learning about what design is, what brand is, and how brands are built, and how perceived value is created. And that's been a hugely profound thing. It ties in perfectly to music, design does, because if you take fundamental elements like dynamics, contrast, color, key, style, they're all exactly the same. Whether it's in any of the arts, any time that you're communicating emotionally, whether it's painting or writing or design or scoring for a film, which is very much design. There's a brief, you've got a client. It's literally the same. So I don't necessarily consider myself not a musician and not a designer. It's all blurred. It all kind of somehow finds its way, into whatever it is that I'm doing.
Well, it's part of the artistry, right? Whether you're creating something that is an auditory symphony or a visual symphony, it's still
right
that brought together, and you're seeking harmony. So
the difference with design, where it becomes really interesting to me, where the head part comes in, is as soon as it becomes a design means you've got a client and a brief, which ultimately changes everything. That's where obviously the commercial art aspect comes in. If you are doing a film score, the director's going to tell you what he wants, and ultimately it's his film. So you've got a problem that you need to solve, which is all design is really, and you are using tricks that have been used through however long we've been alive, back from hieroglyphics, of how to communicate unconscious, subconscious feelings and things. And you're using these things we've learned, such as color, contrast, composition, to communicate, in many cases, so buy my product. As opposed to this is how I feel about this person,
And,
so that's...
And talking about things academically, I think is a great segue into the practical application. So not long after you completed your schooling, you took a path that led you rather far from home, if I'm not mistaken. What was that journey like for you?
Being stuck in South Africa, South Africans are generally speaking fairly globally savvy. We're pretty aware of what's happening kind of around the world, and we are for the most part well-traveled. But we well-traveled because we realize how at the bottom of Africa we are and how disconnected we are. So we go and find out generally. It's a very common thing at that time. And I'd never seen snow before, as an example. And that was just something that just had to change. I went to go and work in a ski resort and lived in New York for a bit. I then moved to London and I freelance design jobs as I was going and playing music in various places. I was gigging at a coffee shop in San Francisco for a while, and it was a year filled of Bruce Springsteen and Jack Kerouac. That's kind of, and it was wonderful because certainly from I'd been to the UK before, but from the US, it was an amazing eye opener, because I think that people that haven't been to the US don't realize that it's, to me anyway, it's 5 countries in one. And it's got nothing to do with necessarily how geographically large it is, but culturally how massive it is. And because we in this country, certainly the English speaking grew up on Hollywood and American TV. And so our frame of reference is very much, the same kinds of things that Americans grew up on. So performing there, all my references and all the things that I was writing about, they were all very well-worn paths rather, by American listeners. And it felt, the US feels a lot like a glove, certain parts. It feels like, a lot of it feels like home. But then it was great to go to Europe and to see a different kind of aspect. And I think in terms of bringing it into the relevance for the interview, it's about cultural context, and you realize that as much as you may travel and as much as you can see the world, there are certain things where we're all the same. Certainly in the Western world. I had a call earlier where we were discussing about how far reaching would I be able to work as a design consultant. I think West is kind of Western world pretty much. When you start going to China and red traffic lights mean, that's where things start kind of getting a little tricky, because red has got so many strong meanings in the West of danger, essentially, and don't go, that you don't know how deep it goes, with the idea that red being a good thing and being but in that context, learning about culture and learning about how people are generally the global village, culturally really has just been, for the past years, it's just become we just not disconnected anymore. And I think traveling really opened it up for me.
Sure.
It was cool.
And so speaking of growth, as you've grown in your profession, so too have your opinions matured about branding. I think that we can all make that assumption, right? What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned? And have you seen any of your design philosophies shift?
Yeah, I think, one of the main things I learned was to broaden my perspective at the time that you are there to just solve a design problem. A lot of the time you'll come into clients who don't actually know what their problem is. In fact, that happens most of the time. And they'll say, well, we want a website. And the role for me of the designer is to dig down and to find out what they really need. And it's to ask, well, why do you want a website? Because everyone's got a website. Yeah, that's not a good enough reason. Let's dig deeper. Why? Well, we want to sell more product. Okay, you want to sell more. You don't want a website. You want to sell more. That's different. The website may be the way of doing that. It also may not be the way. It also decides what kind of website it is. Otherwise, you would have just gone and put a WordPress sort of brochure full-page website. And those are the important questions. And I think a lot of the time what I've learned is that people try and solve business problems with marketing and branding. And they try and solve branding problems or marketing problems with business. And they don't necessarily know where the overlap happens. So invariably what will happen is a lot of the time you'll go into a meeting or a briefing session, you'll end up saying, that is a business problem. And that needs to be sorted out at a board level before we even begin this conversation, because you're going to spend X amount of money and it's going to achieve you nothing. Actually will be guaranteed wasted because it's not solving the right problem. In fact, you don't even know what the problem is until you solve the right problem.
And at what stage in your career do you think you had that realization? I just don't, I know when I went to art school, that's not something that they taught us. Right. And I was lucky. It happened fairly early on because I didn't stay in agencies long. And it was just purely because I happened to see an invoice on the desk of work that I'd done, and I compared it to my salary. I left. And I realized that actually what this business is about is learning how to sell. So as a result, from about 2 years in, I was pretty much an entrepreneur running my own business and solving clients' problems. And for me, it's very much about, if you've got X amount of money and you're investing it, it's my responsibility to ensure that you get a return. Otherwise, how am I going to get another client? Because I have to have your testimonial. I've never advertised, and for 22 years, and all of my work has been referral. And that's where, you literally have to come in there and say, right, you're going to spend that amount of money on this logo in this category. There's nothing wrong with your logo because it's business to business, or they don't even see your logo. That's not where you should be spending your money. Who told you that? Like, your wife doesn't like your logo. That's cool. She doesn't have to look at it. Like, it's not going to give you a meaningful return on investment. Or my husband doesn't like
the color of the interiors of our office. And it's like, well, is he a client of yours and does his business matter? Because otherwise I don't care. I care about what your market responds to and what's going to make you money. And that I learned because I had to take accountability for the money that they were giving me.
And did you ever find, and along the way, did you ever find that your philosophies shifted? Like there was one belief that you were dead set on, which of course is very commonplace for someone in their early 20s. And then as they get older, they realize, that's not the best.
I mean, as you would have, and I'm sure this happens to every designer, you come out of design school and you have very idealistic ideas about beautiful design and how design can change the world. Sometimes ugly design is what's right for the job. That's the one thing that's definitely a paradigm shift, because everyone wants to make things, slick. And the bodega on the corner shouldn't look like Apple. And like the classified section of a set, there's reasons why certain things are designed to be aesthetically jarring, if you like. I mean, if you look at the Batman, I don't know, can't remember which one, the more recent one, that Batmobile is ugly and it's intentional, and it's so ugly, it's beautiful because it works. It's all about what works. And I think, designers want to be artists, and you're not. You're not an artist. You're a problem solver that uses artistic tricks to solve financial business problem. And that's what most certainly young designers don't get. That's the one thing. The other thing is work for budget. And this is something I still struggle with. And my strategy and the way around it has changed over the years. But if someone's only got whatever it might be, $200, let's say, for a logo, you've got two choices. You either turn it down or you give them a $200 logo. Now, when you're a student and you're starting out, you kind of want to do the work and you don't have the experience, and you think, well, I'll take it on. But you get to the point you can't take on that kind of work, because if I don't have something I can show in a portfolio or add value, if you don't recognize the value, we're just not a good fit. And that's another thing that a lot of people will road. And I understand from a business perspective, don't turn work down. I can't do that. The downside of that is scalability. I'm never going to be a huge agency that just takes on all work and does all things. And I don't want to be, because I think a lot of the time, those huge things, to a hammer, every problem is a nail. And so a lot of these agencies, they'll want a website. Cool, give you a website. I want to give you a return on investment. It might have nothing to do with the website. And so I turn down work. I know I'm not going to, that's either I feel there's no value in it either for me or for them.
Sure. Well, I mean, there are natural fits that you should be able to pretty much assess and be able to look at with great immediacy and know whether or not it is mutually beneficial, which is really what it's all about, right? It's not just, can I solve your problem? It's, is this going to help me help you, and vice versa?
Yeah. Am I the person that should solve your problem?
Right.
There are other people that would be better suited. And that's the other thing. I mean, the areas of design where I have very limited experience. I mean, let's take toy packaging. If I got a brief in to do a new range of kids' toy packaging, I would need a heck of a lot of research to feel confident, because I've never worked in that space. And if it was a time pressured thing, I would buy someone who had a lot of experience who understood the design cues and to get it right. So yeah, I mean, there are times where you're not the right person. And I think the goal is where you are the right person to solve a problem, the value will be met on both sides.
Completely. So I'm going to kind of migrate us into a slightly different avenue, which is about process. And that's one thing I really enjoy exploring is process.
Yeah.
So we all have different approaches that we take to make it to the finish line. Let's say you're working on a comprehensive branding package. There's a logo, a design system, the whole deal, right? Can you talk to us about how you approach a design project like that and how you see it through to the end?
Yeah. And I think this again is something that you don't get taught enough. The business side of it and the things that I've learned process wise are not taught enough in design schools. The first thing is that I usually stress people, and certainly for me to spend the most time on, and that is understanding the market. Almost every single instance of any design that has gone wrong is if assuming that I'm not talking like an architectural thing where stairs that go nowhere. I mean, assuming that the numbers added up, and that's the solution makes sense. If those things fail, it is almost always a result of not understanding the user. The person didn't buy it or didn't use it simply because you didn't understand what would make them buy it or use it. One of my favorite quotes that I sort of live by is that I think it's Abraham Lincoln, where he says, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. I think that's the quote. For me, preparation is everything. If you take the Orange Telecom logo, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am.
Just the orange square. I do. It's one of the examples I use in talks that I give, and I say, well, how much did that cost? How long did that take? And invariably, it would take 5 seconds. I wouldn't pay anything for it because my daughter could do it. And I then ask, well, it took 2 years because how do you know it has to be an orange square? Helvetica bold orange at the bottom. Okay, so where does that information come from? And so I think from a process perspective, the first thing I do is understand what is this thing that you are trying to sell, this product or service, and what problem are you trying to solve? Whose problem? And let's really understand and go into detail. I mean, get it down to the actual person. How old is this person? I want to see this person. I actually need to believe that I can have a conversation with this actual person. And if you get it down to one person and you widen it down to the next and widen it down until you know that that's a 70% hit, that's a 50%, so that you know that you're making informed design decisions. And once you really understand that person, you then just do the research and you've got all the design cues against which to measure the right decisions. But this is where it gets important, is the involvement of the client. Let's take a logo, because this is an easy one. It's one that everyone deals with. I mean, it's an obvious one that someone designers are trained to do, and people need a logo. I've never understood why designers give clients options. It makes no sense to me. Why on earth are you giving a client 6 logos? They're not qualified to choose. Like they got a designer to design the logo. If you give them the option, it implies that it's about aesthetics and taste, which it isn't. That's decoration. That's getting an interior designer who's going to tell you, well, do you want that's your home? For your home thing, do you prefer a yellow couch there or a whatever? That's cool, but this is your business. And you hire a designer so that you're going to make money. You hire someone who's experienced, and he will tell you. Having said that, and this is key, it's not just walking in, there's your logo, thanks. It's including the clients in the process right from the beginning. And this is what people don't get right, I think, a lot of the time. You've got to first set up the criteria against which logo must be met. Their successful logo can be measured. Number one, how do you know that when we've arrived there, how do you know we've arrived there? And there are very specific criteria. So there'd be the basics of good logo design, sort of memorability. It needs to reduce well. If you want to It's got to fit on the side of the pen. It's got to fit in the industry or the business category. If it's in finance, it can't look like a candy store. And once you get them to agree on the criteria, you then and you show them, right? You then go and show them 50 or 60 logos in that business category. And you say, right, let's look at the design cues. What's working and what isn't? What is successful and what isn't? And we know that in this category, 90% of the colors are green, blue, maybe a burgundy here and there. So sure, you can go shocking pink. It's immediately not going to look like it's in that category. By the time you get to the end, they love it because you're part of the process, and psychologically, you've ticked every box along the way. They feel included, and they feel like they solved the problem with you because you shared the process with them. It's such a here your 6 logos. Like, so for me, yeah, client inclusion is key. Being able to explain why you've made every decision that you have, and be able to challenge them. Because if they say, well, I don't like that, I'd rather have this, then you say, cool, why? Justify it. If you can justify it and match it up with the criteria that we've set up, awesome. I'm all for you. I mean, we can go in that direction. Invariably, they can't. That's why we didn't go there. That was ruled out like 2 weeks ago. So you've agreed already that we passed that. That for me, I spend a lot of time. Oh, and the final thing is it's got to ultimately has to feel right. Again, it's a quotes. I remember I love quotes. Buckminster Fuller, he's got a quote, and it's something about if at the end, it's all about the function first. It's all about solving the problem. But if in the end it isn't beautiful, he knows he's done something wrong. Now, for me, it's not necessarily the aesthetics. If the clients, if it doesn't feel right for the clients when you've gone through that process, then we've missed something. You didn't understand them. You didn't understand their needs properly, because it's almost like a psychologist in a sense. It's difficult to get them to articulate their needs as well. They understand their industry. You don't. You have to get into their heads, and they aren't always able to articulate well. So you got to spend as much time doing that as you do with clients, so that the final result, they go, wow, I really like that. And it makes sense, because when somebody asks them, why did you go with that logo? They want a story to tell. They need to justify it for themselves. So they go to, well, it means this and this. Like, it's all part of the game. You know?
Well, so your process is very much like mine. And I can tell you that it has backfired for me. And I'm curious to know for you about some professional experiences that you've had. So let's start with the I really fucked that one up moment. Sure. So what happened? And then, of course, what would you do if you had the chance to do it all over again? But because I don't want to end on a negative note there, I'd love to know what you felt was your most critical success. So can you share those stories with us?
Yeah. Sure. We all have those moments where you just read it wrong. And it does. It becomes a fuck up, whether it's financial or otherwise, or you lose a client, or you, I suppose I've been screwed over by clients, multinationals, and lost money and not have the financial muscle to kind of bother going to court. But in terms of where it was my fuck up, I didn't, in terms of exactly what we've just been speaking about, I didn't decline accurately, or I wasn't firm enough about my criteria and my rules as to an equal partnership in the process. As soon as a client goes, well, you work for me, we need each other. Great work only happens with a great client relationship. It just doesn't happen any other way. So um, there was a time where it was for a recruiting company, and we did all the work, and we really cracked a phenomenal concept. And, I was really excited about developing it, getting it forward, and because they were Precious, and it was their company, they developed it, and they probably developed the logos themselves. After 4 weeks or 6 weeks in, I just said, no, we don't like, we're going to revert back to this thing. And that's where legally I should have had in, which I now do, clauses and things where should that happen, it's, thanks very much. It's been interesting, and take care. And it cost both parties money and time and effort, because I essentially fired the client. I, through various network connections and friends and favors and those things, handed over the remaining work, but it left, it was a horrible feeling, and it was a question of bad expectation mismanagement or expectation mismanagement on my part. And now I've learned that the hard way. I'm very, very specific now, and I'd rather lose the client up front and risk reputation.
And how would you remedy that today? So what do you do to prevent that from happening today?
I explain it and explain the process and the points at which either party can say this isn't working, or where things from experience have gone wrong and can go wrong. I'm just make it very clear, and not in a obnoxious, my way or the highway kind of approach. More, it's a partnership. There are things that I know that I'm going to bring, and there are things that you know that you're going to bring, and let's define our lanes and work together. And if you come in my lane, that's fine, but realize it's my lane.
Right.
So, right. And the same thing, and if you invite me to your lane, that's fine, and it's your lane. And let's just to the end together, understanding the rules. But the problem is that when clients think that treat designers as if, or branding experts as if or cleaning floors for them or making them breakfast, there's a problem. It builds a lot of resentment. The industry gets a bad name. It's been some horror stories.
Sure. Well,
in my early days, I got a phone number on when we still did a lot of very expensive heads. I sent a job to print that cost me an absolute fortune because I obviously had to pay for the mistake. But anyway, I don't really send them to print anymore.
Yeah, we can share horror stories offline.
Sure. And a success story, I guess, evidence that my process works. There was a client, a large multinational, that had gone through over 2 years, 3 of the biggest agencies out there, and kept firing the agency, couldn't decide. They needed an identity done. And the problem was that there was too many cooks in the kitchen and too many decision makers. And again, it was a criteria issue because it then comes down to opinion. And it's that whole issue of it's got nothing to do whether I like it or whether you like it. It's about what's right. And we went in there and, we solved the problem and delivered a really nice mark, which still stands to. It was nice to outpitch and just prove that the process. Look, it could be a number of different factors. It's hard to pinpoint to that specific thing. It could be a personality thing. It could be a number of different things. But for me, it was very much about the process. It was very much about get opinions out of the room. It's get the criteria agreed upon. Because design is just solving a problem. Define the problem correctly and accurately, and then take opinions out of it. You've either solved it or you haven't, and it's black and white before you begin. And
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that was cool, because that philosophy has taken me far. It's worked well, and it's given me a lot of confidence. I think that's really what that did for me. It's more confidence going into, a boardroom and really being able to just know that you know your stuff and that this works.
And speaking of confidence, well, we know that you were a musician for a while, and obviously that takes quite a bit of confidence to get on the stage. But when you're not designing, when you're not practicing your craft, what are your hobbies? Do you still play music? Do you paint? We're gonna have to retake that one. Excuse me, my gosh.
Bless you. Those things.
We'll try that again. So when you're not designing, what are your hobbies? Do you still play music? Do you paint? I know you mentioned that you have these blue collar tendencies. How do you channel your creative energies and get recharged?
Yeah, one of my biggest problems is that I want to be good at anything I'm interested in. So it's a problem, because a lot of the times I can't just do something for the fun of it and just for play. So, for example, I started windsurfing as a kid. I had to then become an instructor, because that's just, it's just one of those things. I'm doing Krav Maga at the moment. I just want to then become a black belt. And so I do a lot of things. I love illustration, but I still think, well, it has to be good, because what if I want to do concept art for a film? I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm never going to go and work as a concept artist for a film. It's just, it's not, but in my head, I have this thing where, right, I'm now going to sit down and do the courses from, Art Center in Pasadena, and I'm going to, it's ridiculous. But I go down these roads. I've got a fully equipped workshop in my house, and I fix the house from welding to, all the woodwork, and I want to get into, I'm going to be making furniture kind of stuff. And then of course, music. Music's always been a part of my life. I play guitar, piano, trumpet, studio. And at the moment, I'm just more focused on career direction at the moment and where I want to take my career. But I'll get back to that, because it's nice to not have music as a job. And I'm trying to, trumpet playing in particular, doing corporate work and session work really became a job. And I just had to not have it more for a while. So I've kind of, that's on the back burner. So the studio is sitting there, and I've got using it as storage at the moment, and I'll unpack it. So they go in cycles. At the moment, there's a lot of DIY stuff happening.
I have a recommendation for making it so it's not a storage unit.
Sure, podcasting, yeah.
Just move your Zoom calls into the recording studio, and you'll be like, okay, I have to change the background.
Yeah, I spent so much time. One of my good friends is the top mastering engineer in the country. We spent so much time flattening that room, and we built all the acoustic panels ourselves, of course. And it's an amazing room. I mean, it's just, but yeah, absolutely. That's, I mean, certainly from a voice recording perspective, I've got I can edit it myself. It's
sure.
But that's the problem. Also, your hobbies become, it's hard for me to do things where my brain doesn't think, is there a way to monetize this? And I need to be better. I guess I just end up watching series, and then I feel like I'm wasting my time and I should be working.
Well, if you feel like you're wasting your time, then just pick up a book. You'll feel like you're actually nurturing your brain a little bit more.
Right, exactly.
But I must say, I really appreciate you sharing your time with us. Might you have any words of wisdom you care to impart before you go?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I lecture at design colleges, I'd say for the young, when it comes up, people are very quick to jump onto a defined, whatever the kind of job or career titled at the moment might be, right? And I try and explain to them when I was a student, like none of that shit existed. Right? We didn't even have the iPod yet, never mind the phone. So like you want to be an app developer. In 10 years time, apps may write themselves. We don't know. The idea is rather to become a designer, become a critical thinker. Because if you learn critical thinking skills and design thinking skills, you are, regardless of where your career ends, whether you move into 3D modeling or photography or strategy, keep it about the thinking rather than learning software. You can pay propeller heads to work software. There's new software that comes out every day, and you're never going to keep up with it. And you're just going to feel behind. As you get older, you suddenly feel like, oh my God, I'm now going to learn like InVision Studio so that I can, no, you really don't. You have to understand what happens to a person when they land on a website. Like, that's what you have to understand. Understand people. In this many ways. And look at other designs. I mean, if we're talking specifically designers, look at design all around you. Look so that you can see. Just look at, I'm looking at this pen at the moment and I'm looking at these tiny little lines here. And I'm like, that's an interesting detail. I wonder why they put those there. Is there a need? Is it aesthetics? If it's aesthetics, what was the choice? I just spend my life doing this shit, whether it's shoes or whether it's a kettle or whether it's a logo. Look at stuff and think about it. As opposed to just looking at what are the design trends for 2021 and let's create a poster that looks cool.
And I got to say, your insights, they're not just applicable to designers. I think that they're ubiquitous. They're universal. They apply to anybody. Open your eyes. See what the world is offering you and presenting to you, and use that as an opportunity to understand your world and to craft your worldview and shape how you perceive.
Absolutely.
And then the other aspect is to use your brain, be multifaceted. It's pretty clear that if you are open to what is around you and you think, the world, I hate to use this trite euphemism, but the world is your oyster, and it truly is. When you open your eyes and you open your mind, anything becomes possible.
Right, and it's about your perspective, and you have a unique perspective on things, and it's important that you understand what your unique perspective is and how that solves unique problems. Because otherwise, if you don't do it, no one else can do it. They'll do it in their way. And I think people don't do that enough. We can look at the same thing and see very different things in the same thing. And it's about self-discovery. I think that is as any kind of designer or creative problem solver, self-discovery is key, because you've got to do kind of who you are, if that makes sense. They asked a ballerina once, I can't remember who she was, but they asked, why do you dance? And she said, it's what I do with who I am. And that for me is key. The self-discovery aspect of this whole business is absolutely critical. Because that's the only place you will find the uniqueness, is in what is interesting about it to you, not because somebody else said, go look at that, and that's interesting. Maybe it's not interesting to you, and that's cool. That in itself is valuable. Just because somebody else said that app design is interesting doesn't mean you must jump on the app bandwagon. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you think it sucks. And that's valuable. It can almost be more valuable knowing what you don't like.
Sure.
There's certainly more of it around.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it again.
I'm the honored one. And right. It's been
And
truly great.
and if people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, I mean, the the whole my whole career at the moment is in flux, but the company at the moment is Carbon Media, Karbon Media, media.co.za. Um, they can mail this link and the details and all that. And, obviously, just on LinkedIn. I'm certainly more active on LinkedIn now than anywhere else. The company kind of page at the moment is, I've been planning a redesign for a long time. I'm still formulating where it's going. And so it's a little bit of a treading water thing, and it's a little bit of a Me Too kind of thing at the moment. Isn't really, this is one of those things where I'm not at the moment with walking the talk specifically. It's much, there's the work we've done. And it's literally a place clients who look for referrals. They say it's not like people are going to Google and find it. And it was never designed for that.
Yeah.
It's literally like he's the guy you should use. Go and look at his site, and they end up there.
Sure.
But I'm moving more into doing online courses and public speaking, and more of an education space.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah.
So are you going to have an explicit like Gavin Knox-Grant website?
Yeah. I'm actually, I mean, it's pretty much I'm probably going to be launching the first, my first online course, even as 2 weeks.
Okay.
They will.
Well, definitely let me know, and I can include it when I launch this the podcast that you'll be featured in. So I imagine that this will end up airing, I would guess, in like March.
Okay,
so
awesome.
So if there's anything in particular that you want me to add in, I can go ahead and add that in the intro.
Awesome. We'll definitely do that. I'll be a lot further along by then.
Cool. Yeah, and
exciting.
Whatever I can do to kind of share the love, I'm happy to do that.
Oh, and sure. It goes both ways. Like really, I mean, it's been really awesome, and it truly goes both ways. If there's anything I can promote or talk about, or let me know.
Sure. Yeah. Right now, this is in its fledgling stages. I've been knocking around the idea of doing this podcast for years, and I started back in January and hit a major roadblock in the process with the formatting. So I had to come up with new formatting, and I was about to start that in March, and of course the shit hit the fan. And so the way that I ended up doing it completely shifted, and now like the whole interview concept, that wasn't even part of the original format, right? The original format was supposed to be a banter about different things going on in the world of branding, from typography to logo history to brand refreshes and so on. And as the show's gone on, like, I never expected to have a Q&A section, right? So people are actually sending in questions, and I'm like, okay, I guess I have questions to answer.
Great. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I think there's a heck of a need. I really do, and I don't see, you see a lot of kind of generic marketing rubbish. There's a lot of marketing people out there that really, honestly, just don't understand the difference between design, branding, marketing, advertising. They all just think it's marketing. They don't understand the vehicles and the hierarchy and what's supposed to do what. So they just go, well, these are the rules to sell a product on social media. And it's just not interesting. And so I think what you're doing it's not just interesting. I think it's important.
Yeah. And I think my goal is, and you obviously figured this out, that, my goal is really to deliver something to younger designers and to figure a way to get them engaged, because as an agency owner, even when I would have these creative sessions with my designers, I would reference other work, and they would have no clue who Paula Scher is, and they'd have no clue. And I would go even further back and be like, and mention Joseph Mueller Bachmann, and Milton Glaser happened to be one of my instructors, and so.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Here,
That is something.
One second.
That is amazing. That is flipping cool, man.
Yeah. So here's a picture
Jeez, man.
of Milton Glaser and me in 1996.
That is so cool, man.
So
that is so cool. Yeah, we're not far behind. I mean, I started, I'd done my music degree. I did my music degree in 95, 96, 97, 98. So I started design in 99. But yeah, I mean, Milton Glaser, and obviously, what's his name from Braun? What's his?
I'm not sure.
I've forgotten now. That's mad. But no, what you say is so critical. I mean, I had a whole thing there on David Carson a while ago, and how profoundly influenced I was by his work.
Yeah, he and I are like passing boats in the night. We keep going back and forth trying to come up with a date for him to do the show. And so he emailed me. I guess a friend of mine suggested that he be on the show, and so he emailed me about it. And
wow.
And so I'm like, okay, cool. When do you want to do this? And he's like, how's Wednesday? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, I can't do that. How about it's just been this back and forth.
I mean, for me, this is already interesting because David Carson to me is he's a tricky one, because he's like the only designer. He's to me moved across to artist. He's a big artist.
He is.
But he's not really in the strict definition of design. If you book David Carson to do something, you're going to get David Carson. Whether it's like the right thing or not, you're getting David Carson.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which is really interesting. And I think that it's Berger or rest where he just became this rock star designer, where he can afford to do that. I mean, very few people. I don't know. I can't think of anyone else actually that is in that position.
Barbara Kruger. Are you familiar with Barbara Kruger?
I know the name, but I don't know her work.
So, you know her work. Here, hold on. I'm like,
even Paula Scher is solving problems. Do you know what I mean? Like on her private projects and stuff, she does cool, very interesting kind of illustration. She's still solving design problems for a client.
Do you recognize this?
Oh wow, of course.
Yeah, so this is Barbara Kruger, and
it's one of my favorite brands. It's such a phenomenal brand.
And so, she makes these amazing immersive experiences now.
Oh wow!
Incredible, isn't it?
That's intense. I love it.
Yeah, there was this one that I got to experience. I think it's this one actually. This was in Washington, D.C. And yeah, that's exactly it. It's the Hirshhorn. So I happen to have a bunch of these photos.
So she gets booked to do that thing, and that's it. Like,
yeah.
Who was that lady that did those happenings in Times Square? She almost like performance art, where it was just words, and I can't remember now, but yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. Where so she almost like installations.
Oh yeah, isn't that incredible?
It's amazing. So yeah, you get them, you get them, but if you're a bank, if you're a new startup kind of cryptocurrency bank, you're not going to go to David Carlson to design your logo. Like it's just, I like, and that for me is fascinating because I'd love to know his take on that. I mean, maybe he does, maybe it's just he does, and it's just work that I've never seen. I'd love to
I
his
don't know.
take on where design. What is the difference between design and art? Because to me, if you look at the dictionary, it's pretty clear. Like design is literally solving a problem,
Right.
and it has to be a problem in order to find a solution. And if you want a problem, find people,
Well,
right?
if his calendar and mine ever are able
Yeah,
to overlap, and I get the opportunity to ask, I will certainly to include that amongst those questions.
absolutely. And another amazing one would be Michael Beirut. I mean, I'm reading one of his newer books at the moment.
Mhm.
He's another one. It's just have you seen a lot of his? I think he's got a TED talk, or he's got a couple where
I
he
haven't.
talks. I'll send you a link. And this I find really interesting. He talks a lot about the client education process as well. And he says, you think that just because we're Pentagon and we like everyone thinks we're revealing at the top, we have the same problem. The client thinks I don't like it. They have exactly the same shit
Yeah.
that they have to deal with at that level. And I found that really interesting.
I gotta tell you, one of my favorite stories came from Paul Rand.
Mm,
And so um Steve Jobs had been fired from Apple. And
yes,
so he started Next,
yes.
was another computing company, and obviously the name was meant to be a thank you next kind of a moment. And
And it's possibly expensive and never sold.
so his desire was to have the best of the best. So who does he hire to do the logo? He goes to Paul Rand. And so he sees the logo and he comments, and Paul Rand goes, "No."
Right. And that, I love it.
And he's like, he literally told Steve Jobs that he could go fuck off and hire someone
Right.
else. He's like, "You hired me to solve the problem. This is the solution to your problem."
Is the final solution the cube? Is that Paul Rand solution? Or
Yeah.
did he go somewhere?
Nope. That was it. Here, hold on a second.
Love it. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm looking at
So he created a whole brand language, but what you see, I'll just pull this up so we're on the same
I see
page
that
here.
logo presentation guide. Actually reduces remarkably well.
So yeah, it's this one that's right here that's large on my screen.
Yeah. I just love that he told him to fuck off, and he was like, okay, like that. Actually, that job's back down. Like that's yeah. But the problem is, it takes someone like Paul. So what happens when it's Paul Rand, but he doesn't have the stature of Paul Rand yet?
Right.
And I think that's why I'm going into online education and talks and writing, because I'm just tired. Like if they say, well, why this and why that? Because I said so. Like that's why. Because I've been doing it for a while. And that's why you hired me. Like it's like going to a heart surgeon, and the heart surgeon gives you 3 hearts and says, well, pick one. Which one do you want? It's just
I gotta tell you, the only time that a customer questions my judgment is when I give them options. So
exactly.
so I do things a little bit differently than many. I actually put together a presentation that covers all of the bases. I'm going to share something with you that I would not ordinarily share. Give me a moment. So giving you a little bit of insight. Of course, I need to find it to make sure that I can even share it with you.
Which is a test to your filing system. Take me in.
Well, first I have to remember which client it is. And then see. And then, okay. So, will this work? It looks like it. Looks promising. I'm not seeing it. Okay, let me see if there's a better way to do this. There we go. That'll work. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
And let me know if can you hear the sound? Not that it matters.
Yeah.
Okay. So I begin by going, okay, this is who you are. I go from the point of this is your vision, this is your mission. We're trying to get you to make sure that you're remembering who you are as a company. Because obviously, if they're not using that foundation, then all of this is meaningless. And then,
Right.
whoops.
Well,
And, and then we dial into the tone. So this way, okay, now we've identified who exactly we're wanting to speak to and how we want to speak to them. And so for them, this needed to be a unified, timeless, and simple brand. So we talk about how we unify the brand, and then we talk about how we make it timeless, and then we present. Man, the audio is a little much. Sorry.
Man, I mean, I love your use of color and photography, and it's so great how much of it is just lace. This is beautifully designed.
And so we talk about the brand relationship. And
is it Gotham, or is it the other one?
What's that? What are you asking?
Typeface, is that Gotham?
It is Gotham. Yeah.
Beautiful, man.
We've been using Gotham since 2009, 2010, I think.
You're impressed that I know that.
No, I would hope that you do.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you didn't, there'd be a problem. Yeah.
And then,
beautiful time.
And then we then talk about the actual logo. We then finally present the logo. As you can see, we're 3/4 of the way through the presentation. We still haven't shown them the logo. And so now we show them the logo.
Right. I got you. Yeah. That's lovely. And because then they've got context. What you've done is, you've created context.
Yep.
And so when they see it, it makes sense, and they go, oh, I get it. And they've got a story that they can tell the people that asked them. Yeah, it's nice. Really nice. Sit happy. It's very cool.
Thanks. And then, of course, we reinforce it with a great designer quote.
Absolutely. But there's some amazing ones. There's some amazing ones up. It's just some of them, like the guy from the CEO of Jaguar. I just wish I could say that, where he says, you think good design's expensive, you should see the cost of bad design.
Exactly.
From the CEO of Jaguar, I would love to just make that mine, but he goes so far. I'm happy to put his name there. It's not a problem.
Well, it was such a pleasure to finally actually meet you virtually.
Likewise.
And and maybe one of these years, I'll make my way to South Africa and take.
Where are you? You're based in New York.
I'm in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, you're in Florida.
I'm based in Orlando.
Crazy. I've been to Florida. I didn't get up to Orlando, but I've been to. I've seen the Keys in Miami, and I've been to Tallahassee for my sins.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, it's just it's where the Amtrak happened to go. And I spent a month on Amtrak sleeping, literally sleeping. There's not a time where I go to one of those tourist things. It was like $400 for the month where you just fall and sleep on the train. And it was just like me and On the Road by Jack Kerouac and like bag of peanuts and a guitar and notebook and a mini disc player. And that was it, man.
And
I slept and traveled, saw the country.
And see, you should have made your way to Orlando because Jack Kerouac lived here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Tiny little bungalow in it. Yeah, he lived in a tiny little bungalow in an area called College Park, and the house has been preserved as a museum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down there. I mean, he's a really interesting character. His writing had such a profound to me. And quite in quite a similar way to David Carson from it is like, just don't give a fuck. Just make your own rules. Just write. Just go. Just do that. Font's wrong. Did you see that thing that David Carson did? Look, if you interview him, you've got to talk to him about this. He did a page in Raygun where he changed the font to dingbat. He literally changed the typeface to dingbats because he said it was fucking boring, and no one was to read that shit. So the dingbats were more interesting. So I changed that. It's genius. It's genius. Like, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's genius or drug induced.
Yeah, but I mean, he gets away with it because it was Reagan, So for that market, it was like a surf trash magazine. It was just so perfect. The whole page where they take to just mark, you couldn't read it. Mark.
Oh yeah,
out.
oh yeah.
It's just so cool.
Yeah,
yeah. If you get a chance to chat to him, I would. That's definitely one I'd love to. Yeah, I would. I'll watch all of them, man, for sure. We'll stay in touch.
Right
definitely, and I'll let you know how the courses and things go, and that'll be very cool. If I'm far along enough to get that going, we can just put something at the end or in the beginning. That would be. And please, if there's anything you want from me to promote or anything, please just let me know.
I appreciate it.
All of the ones you do, put them. I'll promote them for sure.
Very cool.
What going? I think you've got a great thing going here. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Well, I will look forward to continuing to keep in touch, and maybe in a couple months we should reconvene and chat over a scotch or something.
Oh, for sure. And then we could even, I mean, it's at some point we could, I mean, later on, if your format ever went to do almost like those kind of Hollywood round tables where you get like four designers to talk about a specific solution. Like you could take something like the London Olympics that was such a fuck, and you could talk about like was it, wasn't it? What there's some interesting big design successful blunders to base it. It'd be interesting.
Sure. Yeah. And, there are segments of the show where, I'll talk about a particular logo. And for example, I talk about the Apple logo in one of the shows, and what you discover is I absolutely abhor the Apple logo. It's terrible. When you actually look at it, because we have been fed this terrible design, it's become so innocuous. But when you actually dissect it from a design perspective, you realize that everything about it is wrong. So
it is it's quite clumsy. Yeah, but, I mean, they just, I think they got lucky.
Well, what happened with the original logo is that the Apple icon had logo type that it was never meant to be removed from.
Oh, interesting.
And so that logo type, which was very stylized, fit right into that niche where the bite is. And obviously the bite exists to help delineate it from being another fruit or vegetable, because you have a bite mark like that in anything else. And,
Right.
and so the A fit snugly into that arc. And then it had the rest of the balance, and the leaf, the direction of the leaf made sense at the time. But now when you look at it, the leaf is on the wrong side. So there are just all of these weird nuances.
I heard a thing from the designer that the bite was an accident, just to play on the word bite. I mean, obviously the BYTE.
Right.
I was just like, did you reverse engineer that? Did you think of it later? Did it happen?
I think it's story. I think it's fodder for legend.
Yeah. And that's, they just got lucky, man. They built this through product design and just the myth built and with Johnny Ives and these. They've just, as you say, they've created the myth.
Yep.
You kind of, as long as you've got something that's cleanly executed, you can kind of build the value and get away with it. And what is good about the Apple mark is that it's very polarizing. The whole company is just completely polarizing. Like people hate them or people love them.
Well, I ended up stuck with it because, I'm a 90s designer like you. And so
I'd never leave. I'm happy with Apple. I'm disappointed in where they've gone after Steve. But the ecosystem still works for me.
Same here.
Yeah.
With the Apple Watch and the iPhone.
Exactly. Me too. I've got the watch, the TV, the whole thing. Yep. And until there is a competitor that can come along to give me, that can compete in how it solves my problems, it's actually a functional choice now. It's not even a brand choice anymore.
Yeah, completely. And that harkens back to their original philosophy, which was having complete control over the hardware and the software. So
exactly.
I don't think we'll see that. I don't think Google is the only company that's positioned to do that. And it goes
against. And branding is such a fuck up from my perspective. Oh my God. I just think it's such a missed opportunity, man. I think it could be such an amazing. I just think it's a fuck up. They don't have competition. They don't have to care.
Yeah, I think what would suit Google very well is to leverage their Nest brand, and
absolutely,
and to create things in that regard. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see that transition happen. I think Google Home fell rather flat, and they already have a really solid brand in place with Nest. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that happen.
Interesting to see.
Well, let's talk about this in a few months.
Absolutely. There's plenty to discuss. We'll catch up.
All right. Sounds good. Take care. Cheers.
Thanks so much, man. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to our Branda Brothers interview from the vault. Special thanks to our guest, Gavin Knox-Grant, and a big thank you to our presenting sponsor, Remix, the branding agency, along with production assistance from Johnny Diggs and Simon Jacobson, music by PRO. Don't forget to check us out at brandshowlive.com and follow us on the socials at Brand Show Live.